Following the entire debacle with the Farpar branch line, Toby was brought along to help finally reopen operations after a week straight of not being able to transport goods or carry any services throughout the branch line. Having Toby on the branch line was practically a heaven sent, as we were now finally able to resume to our normal schedules. However, as much of a relief as it was to have the branch line back in service, the entire week's worth of absence along the line meant that Thomas, Percy, Toby, and Clive were all kept busy with making up for the week that they weren't able to fill. The four engines were extremely busy on the branch line and could hardly afford any time to rest. Now, we engines of course love to work hard, as we all strive to be really useful engines, as you've heard many times I'm sure. However, even though we are sentient machines and have many different advantages to our non-sentient counterparts, we still are machines and can be damaged if we overextend our performance or exceed our limits. We are also like humans in the way we think, breathe, and especially when we feel pain, which is our biggest disadvantage. If a sentient vehicle gets into a crash and damages themselves, they will of course feel pain accordingly, similar to how a human will feel pain after he, say, tumbles down a hill or gets hit by something. And this should go without saying, but if we get damaged far too much, we can die. That is why it is important that we work hard but don't overextend ourselves, especially those of us who are old or haven't had proper maintenance in a while. On the day I'm thinking, Toby was at Ellsbridge Station where he was dealing with David, who was pulling a slow goods down the main line when he stopped at the station and was arguing with Toby.
Goodness me, the Southwestern crew must be really desperate if they're willing to enroll you along their fleet, old man. Careful what you say, youngster. Old men are always the most hardworking. Ha! The only place you would ever work hard on is a heritage branch line. At least it's not that different from the tramway you worked on. Old men are also the most experienced as well. There is no substitute for that, wouldn't you say? Pa, what experience would you have from a tramway? All you do is go up and down the same track all day. Oh, but not when your line is filled with various industries and stations. Mine certainly was. Alright, but what use is all that experience if you can't even move 3 trucks without breaking down? You can't move a real train if your boiler depended on it. Don't just assume that I'm too old to handle work. After all, I've never broken down once in my life. And I can't say the same for you. Henry told me everything when he and Andrew arrived on this railway. Well, if he told you the full story, you'd know that Henry's a failed engine. Oh, I'd stay to argue, but I've got to go. Goodbye, old reliable. This new generation today, they have no respect for their elders. Let it go, Arthur. All youngsters will be like that. It's only a matter of time before they get their comeuppance. I said the same thing to my nephew, but he never quite changed. Maybe where we're going next will calm your mind, Arthur. Aye, we're just going to Croven's Gate, are we not? Yes, indeed. And have you seen what's up there? No, what is there? Hello there, my name is Skarloey of the, Skarloey Railway. What is your name? Well, hello, Skarloey. I used to work on the Wisbench and Upwell Tramway in East Anglia. I was purchased by the Fat Controller after it closed. It's wonderful to meet you, Skarloey. I just wasn't expecting you to be, small? No, not small. Just, don't worry, lad. We know you meant no offense. Oh, thank goodness. I was worried that our first meeting would be a negative one. I certainly wouldn't want to make a negative first impression on such famous engines. Famous, are we? Alright, what did the others tell you? The truth, that you saved a group of stranded people from a rainstorm. That is a bravery that cannot be bought or taught. Don't thank me, Toby. Thank Rheneas. He was the one who went out in the rain despite being in his cozy shed. Well, I suppose if it wasn't for you being stuck, I wouldn't have had to rescue you, now would I? Regardless, me and Rheneas were only doing our jobs as engines of the Skarloey Railway. Such humility from such unique engines. I take it you've never seen a narrow gauge railway before, Toby? Well, on a tramway, you don't see much of anything, let alone a narrow gauge railway. Well, we are honored to be the first ones you've ever met, Toby. Yes, and it was an honor meeting you two as well. I'd hoped there'd be many a chance for me to come here. Goodbye, you two. Goodbye, Toby.
Ouch! I really need to get maintenance.
To give a little bit of better context for the next parts of the story, I need to talk a little bit about the narrow gauge railways of Sodor. Mr. Peter Sam ran the Skarloey Railway, which was named after the great-grandson of King Godred of Sodor, King Skarloey, who ruled Sodor in the 1300s. The railway was placed on Croven's Gate, the first station after Vickerstown. The line runs through Krosny Kurin, through the Haywen Valley, up to the Skarloey station, which is run by two engines, Skarloey and Rheneas. Sir Handel ran the Mid-Sodor Railway, which was positioned at the end of the Sodor main line at Arlsberg. The line runs all the way from Arlsberg to King Ori's Bridge, which was basically the center of Sodor. This railway is ran by 5 little engines: Duke, Atlas, Stuart, Falcon, and Stanley. Today's story mainly focuses on the Skarloey Railway, or the one with Skarloey and Rheneas. Skarloey and Rheneas are both some of the oldest engines on the railway. They were both built by Fletcher and Jennings in the same time that Tallylin and Dalgotch, which at the time would make them about 70 years old. Older than the Wellsworth and Sudbury engines, and almost as old as the Sodor and Mainland brothers. Throughout their time on Sodor, the two engines were happy to work on the Skarloey Railway, but on top of being very old, they were also very poorly maintained, since there wasn't many parts available for narrow gauge engines on Sodor at the time. On this day, it would come back to especially haunt the pair. It all started when Rheneas was just heading out of Skarloey Station with a goods train headed to Glennock, when he was having a conversation with the village's mailman about a big conflict between China and Japan. Oh my goodness, that's horrible. Indeed, more than 2,000 Chinese troopers died over a little settlement battle. It's horrible to hear about such things, but it's even worse when you hear about why it happened. So, why did it? The Japanese wanted to expand their influence throughout China through Shanghai after the Mukden incident. Some monks tried to do this by shouting anti-Chinese phrases in a factory and were beaten to near death by the workers. After that, it led the Japanese to burn down the factory. This caused an upsurge in anti-Japanese and anti-imperialist protests in the city and its concessions. The Chinese residents of Shanghai are marching on the streets and calling for a boycott of all Japan-made goods. My oh my! It seems like as time goes on, people just keep getting more and more irrational. You're not wrong about that. It seems like we're living back in medieval times, when countries would wage war against each other every other week. Let's just hope that the last war was a big enough war to last a while without conflict. I don't want to get crushed under a pile of rocks when the cliffs get struck by bombs. The Second Great War. Let's just hope that that's something we never have to hear. I also don't want to hear my mum's lecture after I get home sopping wet. I got to get home. Well, to make sure that it doesn't happen, we need to make sure that our trains all run on time and that we don't dawdle. I need to get this train to Glennock. I'll see you. Alright, see you later, Rheneas. Oh! Ow! Whoa, that does not sound good. What? It's just a little groan. It happens. I probably just need to be re-oiled. I don't think it's just re-oiling that needs doing. When was the last time you've ever had proper maintenance? You can't remember? Look, Skarloey and I have been very busy here as of late, but you can't compromise your own well-being just for work. Well, Mr. Sam doesn't like it when we slack off. Well, I'm sure he likes it less when you're working yourselves silly. Look, if it makes you feel better, I'll go and ask him when I'm done here, but I have to deliver this train first. Alright, I just don't want things to get too serious with you, Rheneas. I'll be fine, don't worry. In between the Haywen Valley and the lakeside, the rails go through a carved-out section of the hills. When the SKR was constructing the line, they found out that the hills could not be carved through or driven straight through. The rock and stones were too hard to cut with the equipment they had at the time. So instead, the railway opted to build the rails along the sides of the hills, which provided a great view of the Skarloey River. As much of an asset as this was to the passenger industry of the railway, it was a real hindrance to the railway's safety. Despite the railway passing all of the board of directors' health and safety checks to open, the tracks snaked along the edge of the cliffs. It also rains quite frequently around that area due to the large bodies of water that surround the railway. Despite the cliffs and hills around the railway, the rain hasn't caused any avalanches or landslides to the railway as of that very point, until now. Rheneas was puffing along the cliffside rails until his brakes started to act up once again. Ow! Rheneas, I really think you need to stop here.
No, Tate, I can keep on.
Your brakes are hardly allowing you to move. Rheneas, you need to stop.
I can try just a little more.
Oh, bother, that's gone and done it. I told you so.
Don't get smart with me, Tate. I told you over and over again, but you didn't listen. I know. Let's just calm down and go find a telephone line.
The next one's not too far from here. I can get there if I walk, but if I don't return...
Tate.
What? Oh god, it's a mudslide.
Oh dear, we've got to move.
But how? Your brakes are locked on.
Tate, just go and take cover. Don't worry about me.
Rheneas' driver obliged and ran down the line to hide behind something. Rheneas tried his hardest to move against his brakes on his own. They were locked on hard thanks to all the rust that had accumulated on him.
Come on.
To be honest, I'm surprised the little engine managed to move at all. But unfortunately, he didn't move enough. Luckily, since it was a mudslide, the slide itself was mainly composed of soil and dirt, and no major big rocks. So luckily, the slide wasn't strong enough to push Rheneas off the cliffside. However, it was enough to incapacitate him so long as he was trapped. When he finally felt it was safe, Rheneas' driver finally made his way to the crash site, and he was bewildered. Rheneas!
No, Eddie, I'm not hurt. Well, not alright. I'm not hurt. That's not enough. Thank goodness. I'm fine too, in case you're wondering.
Of course.
Don't worry, I'm going to the phone booth right away. I'll ask for Skarloey to come here to tow you out.
Alright, please hurry.
Rheneas' driver ran down the line to the nearest phone booth to call for Skarloey to help Rheneas. But little did he know that Skarloey was having some mechanical troubles of his own. The workmen were looking all over Skarloey for his mysterious cramp that he was having for the past few years when the workmen finally found it.
Well, what is it? One of the springs holding your body up from your chassis is getting old and rusty. It looks like it could use a replacement. Actually, now that I'm looking at your entire body, it seems as though your entire framework could use an overhaul. Am I really that far gone? Indeed. Let me call Mr. Sam and ask.
Skarloey, I need you to take me to Skarloey Station right away. It's an emergency. Rheneas has hit a mudslide and is trapped on the cliff.
Oh no, we've got to go and help him. No, Skarloey, you need to stay here.
What are you talking about? One of my engines is in danger.
Sir, I understand that, but if we send Skarloey to go out there and pull Rheneas out, we might end up with one engine left.
What?
Don't worry about it, sir. I'll be fine. No, you won't be.
Why won't he?
Sir, I've been looking over Skarloey for the past 10 minutes, and he's in dangerous need of an overhaul. His chassis is old and corroding. His springs are all old and ready to break. His brakes are in desperate need of oiling. How long has he gone without a maintenance check?
I can't remember.
Look, I am truly grateful that you are all worried and concerned about my well-being, and I thank you tremendously. But Rheneas is in much more trouble than I am, so bug at me if I'm not going to save him, even on my last cylinder.
That's my engine. Come on, Skarloey. Let's go free Rheneas.
Good luck. Mr. Sam jumped into Skarloey's cab and started his fire. It didn't take long since Skarloey was urging to help Rheneas. Skarloey backed down under the rescue train, which consisted of digging equipment and a few cranes. So with a hiss and a clank, the brave little engine set off for the cliffside. The entire way to the cliff was wet and cold, but that wasn't the main issue. As Skarloey was puffing through the lakeside, his cramp only got worse and worse. He could feel himself starting to jitter and shake. Skarloey groaned and winced as he went along the wet rails, but he did not give up. Skarloey, if you want to stop and take a break, I understand. Working through injuries is I've never given up before, and I'm not starting now. Good man. As he kept moving, Skarloey's pain only grew more and more. At last, he reached Rheneas, who was stuck in the mudslide. Skarloey, thank goodness you've come. Surprised? Who else is gonna rescue you? All right, engines, enough chit-chat. We need to free Rheneas before the mud gets any worse. So with that, the rescue team worked fast. The men worked as hard as they could to free Rheneas from the mud, but the rain was so strong and made the mud much more wet. Whenever the men shoveled out a scoop of mud, the wet mud filled it in further and further. They were shoveling for half an hour until Mr. Sam intervened. Come on, can't you go any faster? What's happening? We should have gotten Rheneas freed by now. We're trying, sir, but the mud is too wet. Once you scoop out some, it gets filled back in.
We can't pull him out effectively. If only we could find some way to pull Rheneas out, maybe.
Yes, we do. We have me. If you all just shovel the harder chunks of soil and stone that are in front of Rheneas, I can pull him out. And his weight can just plow through the mud that's soft.
We could do that, but you're not feeling well, Skarloey. You could break down if you extend yourself too much.
It's fine, sir. I'll happily do it.
Skarloey, don't!
Rheneas, I will. Everybody, start shoveling.
So with that, the men started cleaning in front of Rheneas to go with Skarloey's plan. When the line was finally cleared, Skarloey rearranged the rescue train so that the crane was in front of him. The crane was attached to Rheneas and was ready to be pulled.
All right, everything should be ready for operation. Just pull slowly so that the crane doesn't break.
Thanks, Carl. We're gonna have to pull slowly regardless as to not destroy Skarloey.
Thank you for your concern, sir. All right, I'm ready.
On my mark, pull. 1, 2, 3!
Skarloey pulled and pulled as hard as he could. The cranes and chains strained and strained. But most of all, Skarloey's wheels groaned and groaned. Skarloey's face turned redder still.
Ooh, ow, ow, ow!
In response to Skarloey's groaning, the workmen all surrounded Skarloey and started to push him backward as a means to pull harder. The little red engine pulled and pulled until eventually Rheneas was released from the mud. The men cheered for the duo until a loud crack was heard from Skarloey's chassis and Skarloey groaned even louder.
Oh, bugger!
Oh dear, that's no good.
Don't worry, sir. It was worth it. I hate to make the situation harder, sir, but how are we going to get back to Croven's Gate?
It never stops, does it?
Never mind, sir. I can try to push Skarloey. No, Rheneas, you can't exacerbate your system any further. Just a little issue, sir. Do we have any oil or lubricant spray?
Yes, of course.
Perfect. Anytime my brakes lock up, just oil them for the next run. Rheneas, you will hurt yourself. I'm already broken, don't break yourself. Well, either I break here, or I break trying to push you, Skarloey.
Are you sure you want to proceed with this, Rheneas?
Yes, sir.
Very well, gentlemen. Bring out the oil.
With that, the workmen brought out oil and lubricant to oil up Rheneas' brakes. The oil wouldn't last the entire trip, and they would have to do this every time that Rheneas' brakes locked up. Alright, we've got you oiled up. From what we've looked at your brakes, it should only last you a mile before we have to re-oil.
Alright, Rheneas, are you ready?
Yes, sir!
Right, 3, 2, 1, push!
With a groan and a squeak, Rheneas pushed Skarloey and the maintenance train down the line. I can only imagine the sensation of Rheneas pushing Skarloey was like working out with a torn muscle. Despite being in the pouring rain and being in immense pain, the gallant little engine pressed on, stopping about every mile to grease up. At last, Rheneas and Skarloey and the rescue train made it all the way to Croven's Gate. Rheneas was exhausted. His cheeks were as red as his paintwork. The workmen and everyone in the yard cheered and clapped for the two little engines, but loudest of all was Mr. Sam. Well done, you two. I am so proud of you.
Thank you, sir.
Oi, Mr. Sam, what's going on? I've been waiting here for ages for you two. What happened?
Sorry for keeping you up, Andrew, but there was a situation at the cliffs and we had to... Oh dear, I've got some work to do.
Fortunately, Mr. Sam managed to tame the angry passengers. He explained the events that happened within the past few hours, as well as the brave actions of his two engines. The crowd's fury changed to awe and respectfulness as they walked up to Skarloey and Rheneas and gave their congratulations. The two engines were flattered by the passengers' thanks. In fact, their story made it on the papers the next day, and many people around the island and in England heard about the story. Many different narrow gauge companies were attracted to this news and wanted to do business with the Skarloey Railway. Some were even willing to lend their engines and prototypes to the railway, which was good. Skarloey and Rheneas were in terrible condition. Both of the two engines were in desperate need of overhauls, from their funnels to their wheels. Normally, the works would be capable of doing overhauls, at least for bigger engines. The workmen didn't have the paperwork or knowledge on how to fix them. There were no blueprints or plans for the two engines in their books and forums. This meant that the two engines needed to be delivered to Fletcher and Jennings in order to be repaired, which meant that they needed to be delivered either by road or by rail. Mr. Sam of course went with rail, since the Fat Controller was great friends with Mr. Sam, and offered to get me to pull the two engines to the mainland, along with collecting the two new engines on the way back. But I'll save that for next time.